So I want to talk about this thing that's been annoying me, and I call it self-marginalization. And there are two examples of it happening last night that are, I think pretty clear and prominent examples of what this thing is, what this phenomenon is. So let's dive into it. Now,
This is him. Did he fucking write this directly after he responded to my tweet where he was like, I hate this left-ear and now bullshit?
Glenn Greenwald was proven pretty much 100% correct on the issue of Russiagate. And he decided, in response, he was invited on Fox News to discuss the findings, and he said, yeah, sure, why not? It's not like CNN or MSNBC is going to give me a platform to talk about this, and it's not like the people who were wrong are going to say, you know what, I was wrong, and here's an expert who got it right. So he decided he was going to take that opportunity to talk to millions of people by going on Fox News, specifically on Tucker Carlson's show. And you would think, the response on social media, you would think Glenn came out for pedophilia. Because...
Come on, Kyle. Come on, Kyle. Oh, Kyle, you were fucking wrong, and so was Glenn. You were right, and so was fucking Glenn Greenwald. But like, come on, dog. He went on the fucking show of a guy who was recently outed for saying that Arabs are like primitive apes. There's a way in which you go on Fox News. No, he's not. There's a way in which you go on Fox News without justifying and legitimizing the perspective of a dipshit fascist like Tucker Carlson. Come on, dude. What the fuck? Ugh.
All I saw was nothing but moral condemnation and excommunicating him and shaming him. At a time, again, mind you, where Glenn Greenwald was proven 100% correct. There was nothing but pure vitriol thrown his way because he dared to go on Fox News to talk about it. Now, some people even, went as far as to say, oh,
I don't even think Kyle would go on fucking Tucker Carlson and not have and not have a more principled approach than fucking Glenn Greenwald, dude. Come on. Oh. No, going on Fox is not a problem. Going on Fox News is not a problem. Going on Tucker Carlson's show is not a problem. I completely understand. The importance of having a voice like Glenn Greenwald's get heard on the Tucker Carlson show. But the reality is, if you're fucking, God, if you're letting off fascists, if you're letting off fascists easy, okay? And essentially, the only reason why you're going on from Tucker's perspective is to attack Democrats, then you're serving the fascists. That's all you're doing. All you're doing is serving Tucker Carlson's nefarious agenda. He doesn't care about the fucking truth. His audience is not going to remember you. His audience is not going to think like, oh, this guy seems like a reasonable leftist. Like, I should go watch him. All you're doing in that instance is just going on the Tucker Carlson show and fucking shitting on Democrats, dog. Ugh. Come on.
oh, love to own the libs by talking to a guy who just called Iraqis semi-literate primitive monkeys or something like that.
That's literally my tweet. He's reading my fucking tweet, by the way. For those of you who were like, oh no, this is about the Humanist Report.
To go on Fox News to talk about it. Now, some people even, went as far as to say, oh, love to own the libs by talking to a guy who just called Iraqis semi-literate primitive monkeys or something like that. And I honestly think points like that are so beyond hacky that I shouldn't even have to respond to them here. Obviously, Glenn Greenwald does not agree with the most fucked up things that Tucker Carlson has ever said because he agreed to come on his show to talk about a totally unrelated issue of Russiagate, which he was proven 100% correct. And I just find that a sleazy tactic of trying to, link Greenwald to the most fucked up shit Tucker said because he's daring to have a short conversation with him on a totally unrelated issue. But, put that aside. This is the problem of self-marginalization, where people on the left go, hey man, listen, we hate that person. That person you're talking to is genuinely a shitty person. And they...
Fucking Christ, dude. Come on, dog. You literally made a big stink about me not adding you when I was fucking talking about Joe Rogan and how, he only has leftists who do, outrage culture shit that agree with him. And you fucking went on under my Twitter and you posted. You were like, whoa, what the fuck? And then you're going to do a whole video and you're just going to fucking read my tweet without adding me? Like, I still love Kyle, by the way. I think Kyle is awesome. I really do. We have differences in opinion. We have differences in opinion when it comes to freedom of speech and some of this other stuff. But ultimately, he is probably 1,000 times more influential in converting a bunch of fucking centrist idiots than I ever could be. We all have different places in the the leftist collective, but it's just kind of sad. Like, I don't know. I wish I could have a conversation with him, but I've reached out to him a bunch of times. I asked him to come on my show. I don't think he likes me too much. It's fine. It's whatever. Oh, what the fuck? What just happened? That was weird. But like, the difference is Kyle has been way more. Your insecurity is showing again. The fuck are you talking about, dude? He literally read a tweet of mine. What are you talking about? It's not an insecurity at all. What? How is that an here?
Therefore, I honestly think points like that are so beyond hacky that I shouldn't even have to respond to them here. Obviously, Glenn Greenwald does not agree with the, when as far as there was nothing but pure vitriol thrown his way because he dared to go on Fox News to talk about it. Now, some people even, went as far as to say, oh, love to own the libs by talking to a guy who just called Iraqis semi-literate primitive monkeys or something like that. And
what do you think? You think I'm being fucking, hey, Felklamau, you think I'm being insecure? Or do you think I feel...
I honestly think points like that are so beyond hacky that I shouldn't even have to respond to them here. Obviously, Glenn Greenwald does not agree with the most fucked up things that Tucker Carlson has ever said because he agreed to come on his show to talk about a totally unrelated issue of Russiagate, which he was proven 100% correct. And I just find that a sleazy tactic of trying to, link Greenwald to the most fucked up shit Tucker said because he's daring to have a short conversation with him on a totally unrelated issue. But, put that aside. This is the...
Once again, for clarity, I'm not trying to link Glenn Greenwald to the most fucked up shit that Tucker Carlson has said. I'm simply stating that when you go on a show like Tucker Carlson's exclusively to attack the left, you are lending legitimacy and credibility to white nationalists who I know you don't agree with. I know Glenn doesn't agree with Tucker Carlson's perspective, and I understand that it is somewhat of a tactical decision to go out and spread your message to a giant fucking audience. But it's no accident that Tucker Carlson only has Glenn Greenwald on to attack the left. And Glenn is smarter than this. He should be smarter than this. He's a fucking brilliant investigative reporter. So going on the show of a guy who you don't align with in any meaningful way and lending your name, lending your credibility exclusively because MSNBC won't have you on when you are the editor-in-chief of one of the most respectable investigative journalist shops on the planet is insanity to me, and it's childish and it's fucking petty, and I expected more from a person who was incredibly influential in my political upbringing like Glenn fucking Greenwald. And I'm sorry that that's too hard for some people to fucking comprehend. If Glenn Greenwald went on the Tucker Carlson show and pushed a leftist message or pushed his honest perspective, his honest anti-racist, anti-homophobic perspective, and then on top of that was like, yeah, it's really fucking inappropriate that Rachel Maddow lost her goddamn mind and has been fucking losing her shit for a very long time over this Russia stuff, then that's fine. Kyle and I have literally talked on Twitter and joked around about the Russia hysteria stuff. Like, I'm sure he doesn't remember, and I'm sure it doesn't matter because TYT has had more of a centrist perspective on Russia. But again, lending your voice, lending your fucking long track record of investigative reporting to Tucker Carlson on a whim is so disappointing, dude. It's so sad.
Problem of self-marginalization, where people on the left go, hey man, listen, we hate that person. That person you're talking to is genuinely a shitty person. And therefore, if you associate with them, if you talk to them, if you communicate with them, you know what? You're just as bad too. And you're done. We've now pushed you aside and you're canceled. And, you know,
this level of projection from Kyle, because he thinks that people that attack Glenn Greenwald also attack him for going on the Joe Rogan show, is so obvious here. And it's not the same, dog. You go on the Joe Rogan show and you spread a valuable message to an audience that has never heard the perspective of a reasonable person on the left. I don't have issues with you going on the Joe Rogan show. And it doesn't matter if I have issues or not. You can tell me the fuck right off. My problem is I wish Joe Rogan would have more leftists on and not just Jimmy Dore or Abby Martin. There are plenty of brilliant fucking socialists on the internet who are funny, who have very successful podcasts themselves. There are so many leftists with incredibly successful podcasts. Joe Rogan could absolutely have them on.
That principle, I fundamentally disagree with. It's the exact same principle that made Republicans and Hillary Clinton, by the way, say to Barack Obama when he said, I'll talk to Iran without preconditions. They accused him of being soft on terrorism. They accused him of being a naive idiot. They accused him of harboring sympathies to this insane, terrible, backwards government. It wasn't true then. It wasn't true when they attacked Obama for the same reason, for talking to the Cuban government. It's not true when people were attacking South Korea for wanting to talk to Kim Jong-un in North Korea to make peace. And it's also not true in regular political discourse.
We agree with this is the frustrating part, is that I agree with like I agree with Kyle on almost everything outside of freedom of speech, or his understanding of freedom of speech versus my understanding of freedom of speech and anti-fascism. Like, that's the only thing. Like, that's why I love Kyle. I think he's a pretty brilliant tactician in regards to electoralism, something that a lot of tankies and something that a lot of communists fucking scoff at. I mean, we've talked about this on my stream when he came on. I know that it was an uncomfortable one, but fuck, dude.
When you have somebody who wants to talk to somebody from the other side who may actually be a horrendous person on an issue that's unrelated to that. Now, if they spoke about the issue of what Tucker said and Greenwald did not push back, well, that's a different issue, and I would 100% agree with the criticism of Greenwald on that front. But they didn't talk about that. They spoke about Russiagate. So
yeah, that's why he's being used as a fucking patsy, dog. Come on.
It's a weird criticism. And also, it denies a dynamic which is very real that many on the left give no credit to. And the dynamic I'm talking about is providing a gateway out of right-wing beliefs. So, yes, I will concede that most of the people on Fox News are going to hear Glenn Greenwald talk, and they're not going to think like, oh, okay, he's a left-winger, and this is somebody on the left who got it right, so maybe the left isn't all bad. Most of the people who watch Fox News are probably going to be like, fuck the left anyway, and this guy's just telling me what I want to hear, which is good. But the reality is there are some people who are going to watch Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson talk about that. And in their mind, they're thinking, Republicans are 100% right on Russiagate, Democrats are 100% wrong on Russiagate. But now Glenn Greenwald, a prominent leftist, talks, and they go, that's weird. I thought all the lefties were going to be wrong on Russiagate. Turns out Greenwald is right. That's strange. Maybe he has...
Hey, let me tell you something, Kyle. Most of the people who are extremely online or alt-right, they don't give a fuck that you had a consistent message in regards to Russiagate throughout this entire time. Let me tell you from personal experience, okay? I've been getting shit on in my fucking mentions for the past couple of days, despite my vocal opposition to the Russiagate hysteria, okay? It doesn't matter. Most people who are on the right are engaging in that same kind of partisan politics because they don't have a better understanding of policy. After all, they're Republicans. They're probably voting against their self-interest anyway. They just care about their team. And you are on the left, so it doesn't matter. And Glenn Greenwald is on the left as well. So they're going to be like, all right, whatever. He was right on this one. Move on.
Principles, and maybe I should take a second look at some of his work and see what he's talking about. Oh, would you look at that? Here's a, Greenwald railing against the Iraq War and how terrible the Bush administration was. That's interesting. I never thought of that. Oh shit! Next thing you know, they could be, stumbling across other lefties' work, and they find them.
And again, I don't disagree with this perspective anyway. I think that one of the biggest issues that we on the left constantly fucking hurt ourselves with is this notion that you're not supposed to be platforming other people when in reality, I mean, Tucker is the one who's platforming Glenn. So I get that. But constantly going on his stream, his videos, his shows, And then on top of that, stream, god damn it, my fucking brain is fried from Twitch culture. Sorry, boys. Constantly going on Tucker Carlson's show, defending him against boycotts, defending him against people trying to boycott a show for calling immigrants dirty and claiming that they have STDs and venereal diseases. Like, Glenn came out and openly defended Tucker Carlson. That is entirely different. That's literally sucking up to a fascist right at the moment that he is being attacked. And the collective is trying to take action against him for saying fascist bullshit.
Themselves agreeing with it. And I know that this is a dynamic because I've heard it myself. People have told me that I provided a gateway for them out of right-wing beliefs. And the only way that you're going to provide that gateway is not by shunning and excommunicating and morally condemning. The only way you're going to provide a gateway is by going into the lion's den and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to now debate and counter-argue and debunk what you're saying and making clear points, and then maybe you'll see the wisdom of some of my other views. And even in cases where you happen to talk about an issue where you agree, they can still get interested enough in your work and what you're saying to maybe look into other things you've said, and then they go, oh shit, I kind of like what this guy's saying, and next thing you know, they've deconverted from being a right-wing douche to having many left-wing views. Now, for me, I started getting these messages when I went on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Dog, that's not the same. You went on the Joe Rogan podcast for an unfiltered, unadulterated 3-hour conversation about your perspective, about your true and honest perspective. You spread a progressive message on the Joe Rogan podcast. How can you not see that this is an entirely different situation? Whereas Glenn Greenwald went on Tucker Carlson and called for Rachel Maddow to be deplatformed. And the worst part is, I don't even disagree with Glenn Greenwald. I haven't disagreed with Glenn Greenwald in regards to the Russia hysteria. I don't disagree with you in regards to the Russia stuff. I agree. I have agreed. But going on Tucker Carlson and attacking the left doesn't make you come across as a leftist. It doesn't convert any Republicans to your side. You're just a brief footnote in Tucker Carlson's series of fuck the left. Look at a leftist shitting on the left.
Joe Rogan's audience, it's a mix of people. It's probably overall right-leaning, but there's still plenty of lefties who watch it and like it. And I went on there, and I saw in the comment section, and I got comments sent to me afterwards where people said, oh shit, like I looked into your work after, and I was going down a bad path where I had been listening to fucking Stefan Molyneux and others, and I stumbled across your work, and I can safely say you provided a gateway for me out of right-wing views. Now, that story actually segues perfectly into the next thing that pissed me off, which is another example of self-marginalization, which happened yesterday, was Joe Rogan, who's been friends with Alex Jones since the 1990s, okay? And yes, Alex Jones is horrendously wrong about everything he says, and he's incredibly odious to the national dialogue, okay? That's clear. But Rogan's been friends with him since the 1990s. They recently made up, and Rogan went on Alex Jones' show, because I guess he's doing some shows in Austin, Texas. So he was on there, and then people were posting the screen grabs and also saying, Rogan's part of the problem, Rogan is canceled. There were other people who were literally trying to say, Rogan is somewhat responsible for a suicide from a Sandy Hook parent, because that Sandy Hook parent did it on the same day that Rogan went on Jones, and he was one of the people who was suing Jones. Therefore, Rogan communicating with Jones means he's kind of responsible, and how dare he? In reality, everybody knows Joe had no idea that was happening. Joe had no idea that the guy probably did that, and also had no idea that he was one of the plaintiffs in the case against Alex Jones. And if you bring it up to Joe, I'm sure he would be mortified by this. So,
what do you mean? What? Wait, did you not watch the Alex Jones stream? Joe Rogan is 100% aware, dude. What are you talking about? He gave Alex Jones the platform to clear up his name on his show after he had been banned. God. I can't find the conversation that the Humanist Report and Kyle had, but I know he's referencing that conversation they had on Twitter where The Humanist Report was like, well, fuck Joe Rogan or whatever, and Kyle was defending him. He's talking about the father that committed suicide. Yeah, I'm sure Joe didn't know that the father committed suicide recently after being harassed by a bunch of conspiracy psychos. But that doesn't change the reality that Joe does know that Alex Jones had led a bunch of conspiracy psychos and was being and legal action was being taken against them. Taken against Alex Jones. He talked about it extensively on the Joe Rogan Experience recently. We watched it here on this show, on the live stream.
But the point is, now, because Joe Rogan speaks to Alex Jones, by the way, he also speaks to Sam Harris, he also speaks to Jordan Peterson, people with beliefs that I think are totally wrong, and I debate them all day long on those beliefs. But because he speaks to those people, oh, well, now forget him too. He's excommunicated. He's to be shamed. He's to be morally condemned and pushed to the side. And listen, man.
No, Joe Rogan shouldn't be condemned or shamed or pushed to the side for being buddy-buddy with Alex Jones. This is a gross whitewashing. Having a tactical relationship with someone like Joe Rogan is completely understandable. You know Joe Rogan better than I do at this point. You've been on a show multiple times, Kyle. It's understandable that you think you can convert him or you can change him. But Joe Rogan has done way more than just have Alex Jones on his show or go on Alex Jones' show. Joe Rogan has identified himself and has essentially been a launching pad for so many alt-right and alt-light people that, I mean, I don't even know where to fucking begin. Milo Yiannopoulos multiple times. He had Sargon of Akkad. He is partially responsible for Jordan Peterson. He's almost entirely responsible for Jordan Peterson's success. Now, this is a network of people who then go around. He's had Dave Rubin multiple times. He's had Sam Harris, who has perpetuated Islamophobia on the liberal side. I mean, these people then go on and with their newfound legitimacy have people like race realist and recently fucking avowed white nationalist Stefan Molyneux on their platform. How many times has Jordan Peterson had an honest and open-minded conversation with people who are literal white nationalists? Joe Rogan also had Gavin McInnes on multiple times on his show. These people aren't just like random people with a difference in opinion, and I think Kyle knows this. I mean, he has to know this. He covers these people, man. Stefan Molyneux has been on fucking Joe Rogan Experience. I didn't know that. Holy fuck.
That's sloppy thinking. He also had on Abby Martin on his show. He also had me on his show. He also had Jimmy Dore on his show. He also had Andrew Yang on his show. He also had Tulsi Gabbard on his show. So
oh, sick. He had fucking he had you, who is the only fucking like legitimate, serious progressive out of the people that you mentioned. He had Jimmy to talk about Alex Jones and Seth Rich and shit like that. And I like Jimmy. I work with Jimmy. But think about the things that they're talking about on a 3-hour podcast. And Andrew Yang is not a fucking leftist. Jesus Christ. And okay, Abby Martin, sure. He had Anna on too years ago. But this doesn't change the reality that the overwhelming amount of people that Joe Rogan has on are totally on the, not only just on the opposite side of the political spectrum, but people who promote genuinely dangerous ideas. Anyway, I know that you and I have a difference in opinion when it comes to freedom of speech. But, you know, I think you and I both know that freedom of speech doesn't mean you have to give a megaphone to people who promote race realism and shit. You know what I mean? Come on.
Should right-wingers look at Rogan when he has those people on and they go, so fuck this guy, man. He's done. He's excommunicated. This is a childish way of thinking, man. In the real world, there are people who have shitty beliefs and odious beliefs. And to just excommunicate to make yourself feel better is preposterous. And you know what it reminds me of? Here's one of the final points I'll make on this. It reminds me of, remember when you used to take a math test and your teacher would say, you have to show your work. Like, what are you doing? Show your work. That's what this reminds me of. Because, okay, if you shame and condemn and excommunicate, what you're doing is say, you're an irredeemable deplorable, like Hillary said about many of Trump voters. But if you show your work and you say, hey, listen, Joe, I disagree with you massively on this, and here are the reasons why. Hey, listen, Glenn, I disagree with you massively on this, and here are the reasons why. If you show your work and you're making substantive rebuttals and debunking and counter-arguing well, then not only do I not disagree with you, I probably agree with you on many of your criticisms of Joe Rogan or even Glenn Greenwald. I have some
Okay, well, what about the fact that every single person that I just mentioned and some of the people that you just mentioned go on Joe Rogan's platform and have 3 fucking hours to talk to 90 million of his podcast downloaders uninterrupted without any point of contention whatsoever? With Joe Rogan literally saying stuff like, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you seem like a reasonable guy. You wouldn't say anything crazy. Fuck.
disagreements with Glenn Greenwald. But there's this problem on social media where people are so insular in their own little tribal factions that all they want to do is like jerk each other off in their own corner about how right they are and how evil everybody is. And that's how we've gotten to the point where even somebody who you would agree with on most of the issues, you can find yourself saying stuff like, because of who they talk to, now they're part of the problem and they're excommunicated and they're to be shamed and morally condemned. And that's a problem. And you're actually only hurting yourself in that scenario, because other people exist, other ideologies exist. There are nefarious actors out there, and we need to rebut them. We need to expand our sphere of influence, not shrink our sphere of influence. And in the case of a guy like Rogan, where yes, he has some genuinely shitty friends, and he talks to them, and that does give them more exposure. But if you take this approach of excommunication, then it's like, okay, look at it like, again, a math problem. So as of right now, you could say maybe 30% of his guests are left-leaning. Well, do you want 0% of his guests to be left-leaning? Do you want 10% of his guests to be left-leaning? Or would you rather have it more close to 50-50? Which, again, would require dialogue and would require debate and debunking and talking. And again, this isn't to say he's above criticism, because some people will inevitably come after me at that, oh my God, you have a soft spot for Rogan. Listen, go look at the podcast with him. Him and I debated on the issue of trans rights. Him and I debated on the issue of the voting age. There's plenty of issues where I disagree with Joe, and there's plenty of issues where I think his views are genuinely reactionary. And I'm willing to have those debates and those discussions. But that's just the point. I'm going to have those debates and discussions. I'm not going to shame. I'm not going to morally condemn. I'm not going to
no one is fucking arguing that you shouldn't go on the Joe Rogan show. I'd be shocked if people are saying, hey, Kyle, you're doing a disservice to progress and progressivism by going on the Joe Rogan show. As a matter of fact, I personally told you that it was fucking awesome that you went on the Joe Rogan show and you showed people on the Joe Rogan show an alternative, that the left is not a fucking caricature that the right, including people like Ben Shapiro, routinely and frequently try to fucking paint the left as. People like Steven Crowder, another routine Joe Rogan show guest. Okay? This is what I do on Twitch every fucking day. I try to do this as best as I possibly can. I debate conservatives. I go to conservative platforms. I talk to conservatives all the time in an effort to get them, in an effort to understand their perspective a little bit better. I wish more leftists would go on Joe Rogan. Okay? Fuck.
Okay, I'm not going to say you're part of the problem, whatever that means. And I'm not going to say because you have some friends who are odious and because you talk to those people, therefore, you're done. It's just so, it's really smug and it's really cheap and it achieves absolutely nothing, and it only marginalizes yourself more and makes it seem like, oh my God, see, the left can't respond, the left can't discuss, the left can't debate. All they have is clutching their blanket and clutching their pearls and declaring everybody who's not already with them is canceled. And that's the end of the conversation to them. And I'm here to say, no, it needs to be the beginning of the conversation. And just because somebody talks to odious characters doesn't mean that, therefore, you lump them in with the bad actors. Because that's a shortcut, that's a cheap way out, and it's only a way to try to make yourself feel morally superior by doing absolutely nothing. So, again, you want to go after Tucker Carlson on specific...
Again, really, really disingenuous to claim that... Look, I'm sure that there are people who definitely do that. People who are just fucking sitting on their high horses being like, why is Kyle going on this show? But there are equally plenty of people. There are equally plenty of people who... You've done that, says Nate Cook. All right, shut the fuck up, you moron. There are plenty of people like myself who also launch valid criticisms, against people who I'm not talking about going on the Joe Rogan show, but valid criticisms against people like Joe Rogan in general, and an absolute valid criticism against Glenn Greenwald for legitimizing Tucker Carlson's perspective by going on a show only to fucking to shit on the left and vindicate Donald Trump because he was exonerated. I get it, dude. You were right. I was right too. Maybe not as vocal as you were, Glenn, but there were plenty of people on the left who were very critical of the Russiagate hysteria. I mean, he wasn't exonerated. I know. Chill. It's just sad, man. Here. This is the video that, this is the series of videos that I'm going to show you guys about Joe Rogan being a gateway to the alt-right.
Specific beliefs? Welcome to the club. I have plenty of segments where I do exactly that. You want to go after Alex Jones for specific things? Are you fucking kidding me? I've deconverted more Alex Jones people than anybody because I always did specific segments going after him. That's all fine. You want to go after Joe Rogan or Glenn Greenwald for specific beliefs? Yes, do it. Go for it. But you have to debunk and counter-argue and debate, and you do not shame, morally condemn, and excommunicate. And maybe
This is what a lot of people do, dude. This is what a lot of people do. You're being so unfair.
views are shaped on this because there are people in my own family who are right-wing. So I know what it's like to just, you gotta live with it. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You're not gonna talk to your family because, you know, there's some of them are drunk on Fox News. Is that what you're gonna do? Okay, fine. You wanna do that? Fine. But you're not morally pure. That's not morally pure. That's like fundamentalist in a weird way. And also, I have libertarian friends. That doesn't mean I secretly want to abolish the Department of Education and the FDA, and that doesn't mean, like, I'm a bad person if I engage with them. So, I mean, I'm trying to explain to people, like, we live in the real world. So to just shut everything down and say, you're part of the problem, you're part of the problem, you're part of the problem, everybody's part of the problem, except the people who already agree with 100% of what I say. And even if you communicate with somebody, even if you agree with me 60, 70% of the time, but you communicate with people who massively disagree with me, well, what can I say? You're also excommunicated. I mean, at that point, you become the video randomly cut off there. But what I was going to say is, at that point, you become a caricature of what the right says the left is. And we are not that caricature. I don't believe we're that caricature. So, I don't know. I hope people will respond to this video rationally. I hope they see where I'm coming from. But
okay. Here are some individual points as to why Joe Rogan...
Let's just take the slice of people that have been doing the most damage to our inventory and follow them around a little. Or, you know, follow them with the camera in the back room. Yeah.
Black people.
Yeah, because that's pretty much where we have kind of fallen there in the theft of goods at stores.
I wonder what people want people to do that do live in places where they do get robbed all the time by black people. I wonder what they expect the store owners to actually do.
I don't know. Just ignore it.
Let it happen.
Let it happen.
Get robbed.
Get robbed.
So that was Anthony Cumia, who lost his job for, I think, calling a black woman the N-word on camera, shit like that. Anyway, that sounded like a joke. Sure. Here.
21st in Sweden. Massive last night.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Sweden has got problems. Europe has problems. They definitely do. And whenever you have people from one culture that immigrate into another culture and they're disenfranchised and poor, and they have really, I'm going to keep going with it. And they also have a really restrictive, fucked up culture that they're coming from. And they want to impose that.
Here's Joe Rogan perpetuating the Breitbart / far right narrative that is also pervasive in like regular right corners, that Muslims have violated Sweden and have invaded Sweden because they have a more restrictive culture, and they're bringing that restrictive culture into Sweden, which is a fucking debunked, million times over debunked myth that even PewDiePie fucking debunked back in 2014, by the way. Okay? The reason why Sweden's rape statistics skyrocketed was not because Islam, there was an invasion of Muslims, but actually because they changed the distinction of how they log in rape statistics and what they contributed, they changed the description of rape as well.
Culture on the people that live in Germany or wherever, and they want women to start wearing long dresses, and they treat them like they're whores if they don't. That's all fucking real dangerous. They're from a different part of the world, and it's a part of the world that hasn't changed much in a long time. Yep. And that part of the world, I mean, you could call it culture, you can call it religious tradition, but whenever you're dealing with a part of the world that still has honor killings and female genital mutilation, and you don't let women drive, and women aren't allowed to vote, and you have this incredibly restrictive world that you're existing in, and then you bring that world somewhere else, you're going to have a culture clash, and you're seeing that. And this is if you want people to be free and you want people to have the ability to integrate into a more free culture like America is, you also have to be honest about what the consequences are. And you have to be honest about what kind of culture they're coming from. And as soon as you talk about that, you get labeled an Islamophobe. As soon as you talk about this incredibly restrictive.
No, you get labeled an Islamophobe when you incorrectly bring up Sweden and how this supposedly restrictive Muslim culture is changing the makeup of Sweden, or changing Swedish culture, or clashing with Swedish culture because you have bought into the far-right narrative. That's the problem.
Restrictive, misogynistic culture that's based on an ancient series of rituals and beliefs, you become a racist and a bigot by talking about a reality.
And they're not a race. You're talking about culture. And it's important to make that distinction as a Western chauvinist, that I think the West is the best. I don't care what race you are. But I don't think that other cultures are different. I think they're worse. And Islam is 500 years behind us. We were shitty. We had witch hunts.
Inquisition.
We had the Inquisition. They're not caught up to us yet. They're not as advanced. And I think two big problems with them as far as progress goes is the Quran is an exceptionally violent book. It doesn't have...
Fucking insane to say this while also being a born-again Christian, dog. While also promoting violence with your Proud Boys. Talking about how you should choke a trans person. Talking about how if you see a Marxist, you should punch them. Literally perpetuating fascist propaganda. Like cultural Bolshevism and shit. You know? Straight up Nazi shit. But it's just a meme, right?
Have a 2.0 the way Christians do. And no one ever talks about this, but they have a major problem with inbreeding. They are marrying their first cousins again and again and again, and that makes your evolution go backwards.
Yeah, white people never inbreed. You're right. That clip has 4 million views.
Well, hillbillies, they were inbreeding, or royalty, they were inbreeding, and I go, yeah. And it went real bad. It was a bad move. We learned the hard way. We saw Deliverance.
Well, this is the first I've heard of it, but
pull it up.
I'm sure. I'm sure you're not lying. You find anything? Strap yourself in for this. 70% of all Pakistanis are inbred, and in Turkey, the amount is between 25 to 30%. More stillbirths among immigrants. A rough estimate reveals that close to half of everybody living in the Arab world is inbred. A large percentage of the parents that this is blowing my mind. Large percentage of the parents that are blood. Where's this coming from? What is this website?
I blog posted it before I came here.
PJ Media, but these are all the sources that went to this. This source is reproductivehealthjournal.com. This is a BBC investigation that went to it.
So listen to the BBC investigation in Britain several years ago revealed that at least 55% of the Pakistani community in Britain was married to a first cousin. The Times of India affirmed that, in quotes, this is thought to be linked to the probability that a British Pakistani family is at least 13 times more likely than the general population to have children with the recessive genetic disorders. Holy shit. BBC's research also discovered that while British Pakistanis account for just 3.4% of all births in Britain, they accounted for 30% of all British children with recessive disorders and a higher rate of infant mortality. What in the fuck?
Fucking Times of India is a source for Pakistanis. Yeah, exactly.
Labour Party MP has called for a ban on first cousin marriage. Medical evidence shows that one of the negative consequences of inbreeding is a 100% increase in the risk of stillbirths. One study comparing the Norwegians and Pakistanis showed that the risk of the child dying during labor increases by 50%. Wow. That is...
Links to a Times of India piece written by a racist Hindu nationalist. No original sources of the BBC. Numbers are just made up. Joe Rogan. I don't know what's happening over there, but I do know there's a lot of violence all over South Africa, and there are many legit sources that's pointing this out online. Jesus Christ. Joe Rogan just retweeted Tim Pool, who defended him doing the typical out of context move. Jordan Peterson fave as well. This is a scary example of how critical thinking is non-existent in our political climate. Small clips out of context presented in bad faith. You can't even talk about an issue critically without being accused of promoting it. How can you not see what's going on here? Like, how can you be so blind to Joe Rogan so consistently fucking up? Roaming millennial defending him. It's fine. Fuck, there were more clips, but whatever. He's having a real-time brainstorming session about whether the Nazi conspiracy theory is actually a Nazi conspiracy theory, all while boosting it to his millions of followers. Honest question for people discussing the subject of violence committed against farmers, Boers in South Africa. What do you think of this farmer statements? So here's the issue with this. I did a video on the white genocide happening in South Africa, and the statistics don't bear this out at all. As a matter of fact, the murder rate in South Africa is very high, but much higher as a rate, by the way. I'm not talking about totality. Of course, there are way more black people than white people, but the murder rate is on a decline despite being incredibly high, and the murder rate for white people is on a faster decline than the murder rate for black people, okay? So, anyway. Just... Regarding that video Joe Rogan just posted to his millions of followers as proof of the Nazi conspiracy, hey, just so you know, Lakota is a fringe character who recently made partnership with the AfroForum, one of the key white nationalist organizations. Funny thing, his party didn't even know he was doing this, and they rejected his strategy. The guy that Joe Rogan posted a video of, a black African man speaking in Parliament about farm murders, when he was referencing that this was happening in Africa, in South Africa. Anyway. I don't mind. I mean, my perspective on this doesn't matter at all anyway. Kyle's going to do whatever the fuck he wants to, and he has every right to do that. I like that he goes on the Joe Rogan show. I do. I think it's important to go out and showcase a strong unified front as the left to combat
I'm not God.
very
There are 9
successful
whole months.
messaging. The very successful messaging surrounding how fucking hysterical and emotional leftists are all over the internet. It is so easy to find an SJW cringe compilation on the internet showcasing blue-haired SJWs screeching and all this other stuff, being very emotional. And I understand, I empathize with where they're coming from, because at least they're not fucking screeching or crying about how, the West is the best, or like white culture is being destroyed by degeneracy, such as feminism, or female characters in video games, or because Tomb Raider's titties got smaller. Like they're actually fucking crying and fighting for social justice, their rights. Do they look hysterical and bad, and it's not the best kind of messaging to put out there? Absolutely. So I think it's important that people like Kyle go on Joe Rogan's show, and he has the perfect personality to captivate a lot of those people because he comes from the skeptic community, and he still has a lot of those like skeptic-like, somewhat centrist elements within him. So he is incredibly valuable in converting dipshits who are deep in the pit of alt-right radicalization. But that's entirely different than, I don't know, going on the Tucker Carlson show and not really and only fucking, I don't know, going on the Tucker Carlson show and only attacking the left or liberals, no matter how vindicated, no matter how righteous you feel in that moment, that's just a bad look because you're a fucking puppet at that point. And that's just sad. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Kyle Kulinski thing.